Hello, I'm Graham Fitch, coming to you from Steinway Hall in London for Pianist Magazine, and I'm going to be talking about how to develop your inner musicianly qualities with a special focus on harmony. Harmony is really the root of what most of us, the sort of repertoire that most of us like to play is built on harmony. So if we don't know very much about it, it would be a good idea just to beef up your skills a little bit, beef up your knowledge. So I'm going to show you a few things that hopefully will be interesting anyway. So there's a story, a lovely story about Wolfgang Mozart not wanting to get out of bed when he was a child. So his dad, Leopold, would go down to the piano and do this. And Wolfgang, who could hear this through the floorboards, could not stand the fact that that was not resolved. So got up, came down to the piano and did that. Why? Well, if you think about it, when we get to the B, the leading note, there's an implied dominant chord underneath that has to resolve to the tonic chord. Chord 5 resolves to chord 1. It's like a gravitational pull. If I had a pencil in my hand and I let go of it, it would have to drop to the floor. There's the only place for it to go. So this can only go here, and that's known as a perfect cadence. So we have chord 4 to chord 1, which is a plagal cadence, the Amen cadence. We have chord 5 to chord 6, which is an interrupted cadence, or might go to flat 6, anything other than 1. So if we go back to our scale, we can build triads on each degree of the scale. This is chord 1, chord 2, minor, 3, minor, 4, major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished. To make that minor, I'd have to have a sharp on the top, a raised fifth. To make it major, I'd have to have a raised third. So if I have a flat fifth and a flat third, it's a diminished triad. So the primary triads are chords 1, 4, 5, 1. We'll get back to those in a minute. Now, what we need to know next, we've already explored a diminished chord. I haven't shown you an augmented chord. That's where the 5th degree is raised up. So these are known as the qualities of chords, qualities of triads, major, minor, augmented, diminished. But we can also add notes to a triad and make, in this instance, 7th chords. I could make add a 6th there. I could add, what have I got there? A 9th, I could add an 11th, I could add a 13th, and really jazz that up. And this is the sort of thing that Debussy, Ravel did a lot of that sort of thing, just to build on the tradition that they'd inherited. So we talked about the primary triads, and we've talked about a perfect cadence, chord 5 to chord 1. Let me play you a little bit of the Impromptu in A flat from the second set by Schubert. And I'm going to talk over the top of it, which is a bit rude, a bit sacrilegious, but I'm going to call out the chord numbers. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1, 5, what, just 2 chords, just 2 harmonies. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. This is 5 of 6, the dominant of the relative minor. Let's just play on a little bit. So that gives quite a lot of colour, it gives quite a lot of meaning, because it's come after all of these 5, 1, 5, 1. Let me just play that again, that last little bit. Maybe a sad note or a sad moment in the first part of this piece. So it's not a real modulation. What Schubert's doing is he's just enhancing the chord 6 by going to the dominant of that chord to kind of give it a special focus, and then straight back. So what I think would be a very good idea for me to suggest is that when you play your scales, any old scale would do. Let me play G major. And then add a little cadential pattern at the end. Chord 1, 4, 5, 1. You could do this. You could add chord 2, preferably in its first inversion. 2, and there's the tonic chord in its second inversion, followed by the dominant to the tonic, and that's known as the cadential 6/4. It's called 6/4 because 4 notes, 6 notes above the bass. Now, what I'm going to do is, with all of that information that I've just given you, I'm going to go to the famous K545 sonata of Mozart. And again, let's just look at some of the interesting features of the harmony here. And if you know these features, if you're aware of these features, it's like having a map of the terrain. You know what's going on in a much more thorough way, in a much more deep way than you would if you just played the notes. So chord 1, we're in the key of C. Chord 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now that's an interesting spot in the piece. We've got an F sharp in the bass, and this is known as a secondary dominant, chord 5 of 5. So the dominant of the dominant. And it helps composers to modulate. Now that's not a particularly strong modulation to the dominant key, because Mozart's making us wait for that until a little bit later. In fact, it's quite ambiguous. Is it a modulation at all? 5, 1, that's right, 5, 1. 5 in the original key of C. It could also be 1, 4, 1, 4, 1 in the new key of G. It's ambiguous until we get to this spot. I know I'm in the key of G now, but I'm in first inversion, and first inversion is not very final. I'd want to go down to my tonic to be final. Now that progression of harmony is known as the progression of fifths, and it goes through all of music. I'm going to show you an example of Brahms in a minute. So let me give you the chord numbers: 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And he winds up first inversion of chord 2. Chord 1, 6, 4. Here's the cadential 6, 4. And he's firmly established now the key of G. He's made us wait a little bit for that. Then he waves the flag for the key of G. There's no doubt we're in the key of G now. But the first modulation was a little bit, vague, but here we're really sure. So that progression of fifths, let me now play that in the key of C minor, and I'm going to add some sevenths to the chords. And now I'm going to play this passage based on that progression. Which you'd recognize as part of the second theme of Mozart's K332 sonata. It's the same progression, the cycle of fifths. Coming to something a little later, the intermezzo opus 117, number 2 of Brahms, the same progression. I'll show you when we get to it. So I'm now in the key of B flat minor, darker key. I'm going to play it a bit slower just so I can talk over the top of myself. 2, 1, 2, 1. Now here we go. Here's the progression of fifths. I'll play the blocks first. want to hear 1. He doesn't give us 1. Can you hear it underneath? It's the exact same progression that we found in the 2 Mozart examples. So let me move on to just my last example of how useful it is to understand a little bit about harmony. And I'm going to go to Brahms' intermezzo, another intermezzo, opus 118, number 2, in A major. And I'm going to focus on the second phrase. Let me just play the first phrase though. Here, that chord, a dominant 7th in its last inversion, very confident. It can only go there. When the phrase comes back again a little later, Brahms varies it, not only by playing pianissimo now, but by changing that dominant chord, remember that confident dominant chord, into this anxious, worried, diminished chord. And a diminished chord, a diminished 7th chord, is very unstable. You feel it doesn't sound secure at all, does it? Whereas the dominant 7th, just one note can change the entire meaning of the passage. So I hope that's given you a few things to enjoy, to think about, and do explore the harmony that you find underneath the surface of the music. Thank you so much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.